Rain pounded against the mansion's glass walls as Vanessa, 7 months pregnant and trembling, stared at the man she once adored. Ethan Warren, famed entrepreneur-millionaire by 30, and darling of the Los Angeles elite, stood smugly in the foyer. His laughter echoed through the marble halls, mocking the tears streaming down her cheeks. She clutched her coat tight, heart pounding as lightning illuminated his sneering face. In that single crack of thunder, Vanessa realized their marriage had collapsed, with only a suitcase and unborn child. She stepped into the storm. Her husband's triumphant chuckle was the last sound she heard before disappearing into the night. Ethan Warren's rise to wealth had been meteoric. The son of an electrician from Riverside, California, he'd attended public schools and barely scraped by in community college. Everyone said he was a dreamer, and they were right. But what set Ethan apart was his relentless drive. At 19, he launched a small tech startup in his parents' cramped garage. That ambitious venture, Titan Wave Solutions, would eventually morph into a multi-million-dollar tech consultancy sought after by Fortune 500 companies. Growing up modestly, Ethan promised himself that one day he'd have the life of the rich and famous. He devoured biographies of self-made magnates Bill Gates, Richard Branson, Mark Cuban. He cut out motivational quotes and pinned them above his rickety desk. Your legacy is being written by yourself. Make the right decisions. Read one from the Gary Vaynerchuk. By the time he was 25, Ethan was making headlines in tech publications, earning interviews on CNBC, rubbing shoulders with the likes of Tim Cook at Silicon Valley galas. That kind of success brought with it a newfound arrogance. He was unstoppable, at least in his own eyes. The same grit that propelled him to stardom often morphed into ruthlessness. And while he was charming at investor meetings, he seldom showed that same warmth at home. Years later, Ethan had upgraded from his parents' garage to an opulent mansion in Bel Air. He sported custom-tailored suits, hosted lavish parties with celebrities, and employed a small army of staff to keep up appearances. Yet beneath the glitz and glamour, a persistent restlessness plagued him. He wanted more, always more, and no one would stand in his way, or so he believed. When he met Vanessa Coleman, a reserved but brilliant interior designer, Ethan sensed he had finally found someone who could match his drive and complement his ambitions. But the seeds of pride and obsession were already planted. Their meeting would change both of their lives forever. Vanessa Coleman was born and raised in a quiet suburb near Sacramento. From an early age, she displayed an almost mystical talent for design. As a child, she'd rearrange her room each month, turning cluttered corners into cozy nooks, painting bold murals on her walls that made her parents shake their heads in both wonder and mild exasperation. After excelling in high school art classes, she attended a prestigious design program at the Parsons School of Design in New York City. Vanessa thrived in that cosmopolitan environment, her professors impressed by her intuitive grasp of color theory, and spatial arrangement mentored her closely. By her final year, one of her interior design projects was featured in an Architectural Digest exhibition, garnering local buzz. Through a recommendation from a former professor, Vanessa landed a contract to design the Los Angeles penthouse suite of William Stone, a longtime billionaire philanthropist. Stone's property had historical significance, and the project needed both a modern twist and a delicate respect for heritage. Vanessa poured every ounce of creativity into that gig. When the penthouse was unveiled, it attracted the city's wealthiest and most influential, each eager to see the brilliant work of this young designer. Ethan Warren happened to be a guest of William Stone that night. He was instantly captivated by the tasteful minimalist approach, elegant, bold, and surprisingly warm. While sipping champagne in front of a newly installed indoor fountain, Ethan spotted Vanessa from across the room, radiant in a simple black cocktail dress. Something about her quiet confidence drew him in. He approached with that signature grin, introduced himself, and offered to show her his own Bel Air property. Their first encounter was electric, brimming with creative synergy and shared ambition. Neither realized it yet, but from that moment on their fates were entwined. Their courtship was a whirlwind. Ethan, enthralled by Vanessa's talent and genuine kindness, spared no expense in wooing her. Helicopter rides over Malibu at sunset, candlelit dinners prepared by Michelin-starred chefs, private tours of art galleries. Nothing was too extravagant for the man whose pockets knew no limit. To his pleasure, Vanessa seemed more impressed by authentic gestures than mere displays of wealth. A heartfelt note or a simple stroll on the beach often meant more to her than $1,000 dinner plates. Ethan's charm was at its peak during those early months. He found Vanessa's creative spirit exhilarating. She offered ideas for his new office space at Titan Wave Solutions, suggesting splashes of color and organic textures to cultivate innovation. He, in turn, dazzled her with tales of entrepreneurial triumphs and introduced her to high-profile clients, potential big-ticket projects that could elevate her career. Yet not all was flawless under the surface. Vanessa sometimes glimpsed flashes of arrogance in Ethan's demeanor, especially when a waitress refilled his coffee too slowly, or a junior executive fumbled a presentation. In those moments, his impatience and sense of superiority seeped through. His disregard for boundaries was another subtle red flag. He assumed everyone existed to serve his vision, rarely pausing to ask for others' perspectives. When Vanessa mentioned needing time to cultivate her design portfolio, he waved it off. "Once we're married, you'll have all the resources in the world," he assured her, with a dismissive smirk. Still, she chalked it up to his relentless drive, a trait she had come to admire. So she let the small stuff slide, convincing herself that nobody was perfect. Love and optimism can often blind us to cautionary signs. Vanessa focused on the promise of a bright, shared future, completely unaware of the heartbreak soon lurking on the horizon. Ethan proposed 6 months into their relationship, whisking Vanessa away to Lake Como, Italy, under the guise of a last-minute business trip. After a moonlit dinner on a lakeside terrace, he knelt on one knee and produced a shimmering diamond ring the size of a grape. Tears welled in Vanessa's eyes as she accepted. Amid the flicker of candlelight and the soft lapping of waves, she believed in their fairy tale. Back in Los Angeles, wedding preparations went into overdrive. The press got wind of Ethan's high-profile engagement, and gossip columns splashed their photos across glossy pages. Titan Wave Solutions soared even higher in the stock market. Investors loved a glamorous success story. Vanessa busied herself picking venues, sampling menus, and scheduling fittings. She was overwhelmed, but in a good way. This was the life she'd dreamed of, or so she thought. Less than a month before their wedding, Vanessa discovered she was pregnant. It was unplanned, but not unwelcome. She expected Ethan to be thrilled, imagining him cradling her gently as he showered the unborn child with excited kisses. Instead, his reaction was strangely muted. He offered a perfunctory, "That's great news," followed by a quick pivot to a phone call he had to take. In the days that followed, he hardly brought it up. At first, Vanessa felt hurt, but she pushed away her disappointment, attributing his aloofness to work stress. The wedding itself was a star-studded extravaganza at a picturesque vineyard outside Santa Barbara. Paparazzi camped outside the gates, capturing each detail: the designer dress, the A-list guests, and Ethan's triumphant grin. Standing at the altar, Vanessa told herself Ethan's wedding day excitement would translate into fatherly joy soon enough. Yet the nagging feeling lingered that he was more excited about the spectacle than the commitment or the child they now shared. Married life brought fresh challenges. With Titan Wave expanding globally, Ethan was constantly on phone calls with business partners in Tokyo, Berlin, Sydney. He flew out at a moment's notice, sometimes leaving Vanessa alone in their cavernous mansion for days on end. Once he missed a critical prenatal appointment because he'd jetted off to New York for a pitch meeting. When Vanessa voiced her concerns about his absence, Ethan would wave them off. "I'm doing this for our future," he'd say, swirling a glass of top-shelf whiskey. "We have everything we need, don't we? You can see Dr. Bernard on your own." His flippant attitude stung. Vanessa tried to remind him that their baby needed a present father as much as the next business deal, but Ethan dismissed the notion, placing success above all else. Cracks in their relationship widened. Vanessa's nights grew lonely, listening to the echo of her own footsteps across marble floors. She busied herself with design projects, hoping to quell the creeping sense of isolation. Yet the more she tried to hold on to normalcy, the more Ethan drifted into a world of spreadsheets, contracts, and power lunches. One evening, she tried to connect with him by showing designs for the baby's nursery, weaving in both futuristic and organic elements, a style she believed symbolized the blending of their two worlds. Ethan glanced up from his laptop with half-hearted interest. "Sure, that's fine," he said, hardly bothering to look. "Just send me the bill." Vanessa's heart sank. She yearned for him to be a partner, not just a paymaster. Still, she soldiered on, telling herself that once the baby arrived, Ethan would realize what truly mattered. Little did she know that the storm gathering between them was about to erupt in full force. It happened on a night of torrential rain, the kind that turned the Bel Air hills into glistening sheets of water. Vanessa had spent the day feeling uneasy, sharp twinges in her back and swirling doubts in her mind. By dinner time, her anxiety grew. Where was Ethan? He was supposed to be home early for once. A phone call came around 9. Ethan sounded irritated. "I'm stuck at the office," he barked. "Some incompetent junior messed up the projections. I'll be late. Don't wait up." By midnight, he finally walked in. Clothes damp, a sour expression on his face. Vanessa tried to greet him, but he brushed her aside. "Not now," he muttered. "I've had enough stress for one day." She followed him into the living room, determined to talk. "Ethan, I need you to listen to me. The baby." But Ethan whirled around, eyes blazing. "The baby. The baby. Is that all you can talk about? Don't you realize I'm under pressure, building an empire? Everything I do is for us. Yet you're never satisfied." Or lightning streaked across the sky, illuminating the hurt on Vanessa's face. She drew a shaky breath, tears already welling. "I'm your wife," she said quietly. "Your pregnant wife. Can't you see how alone I feel? How little you're here?" Thunder rumbled. Ethan erupted in sarcastic laughter. "Alone, in a 12-bedroom mansion with staff waiting on you hand and foot. Poor Vanessa, you've got it so rough, don't you?" In that searing moment, something in Vanessa snapped. She grabbed her coat, tears blurring her vision. "I'm leaving," she choked out, voice trembling. "I can't live like this anymore." Ethan stared, thunder booming overhead. Then he laughed. "Go ahead," he sneered. "But don't expect me to come running after you." She turned and walked into the storm alone. The downpour hit Vanessa like a cold slap. Within seconds, rainwater soaked her coat, dripped into her shoes, and plastered her hair to her face. She stumbled down the driveway, struggling to focus on each step. 7 months pregnant, she felt every bit of the exhaustion clinging to her bones. Her suitcase handle was slippery, but she clutched it with fierce determination. Lightning lit up the sky, revealing the empty streets beyond Ethan's sprawling estate. She had nowhere to go, no plan, no place prepared. Her closest friends had gradually slipped away, discouraged by Ethan's dominating presence. Her parents were far up in Sacramento, and she didn't want to shock them at this late hour. But one thought kept her going. She deserved better than the humiliating scorn she'd just endured. After staggering through the rain for nearly half a mile, a pair of headlights broke through the darkness. A grey sedan pulled up. The driver rolled down the window, revealing a familiar face, Rachel Thompson, a kind-hearted acquaintance from Vanessa's college days at Parsons, who'd moved to LA a few years back to pursue a career in art curation. They'd kept in sporadic touch, but Vanessa never expected a rescue at such a dire moment. Vanessa. "Oh my goodness," Rachel exclaimed, leaping out to help. "What happened? You're drenched and you're pregnant. Get in the car right now." Relief washed over Vanessa stronger than the rain. She collapsed into the passenger seat breath, hitching in silent sobs. As they drove off, she glanced back at the looming silhouette of the mansion, wondering if Ethan was still watching, if he even cared. She felt like she was drowning, literally and figuratively. But one tiny spark of hope remained. She was no longer alone on this journey. Ethan, meanwhile, stood at the foyer window, watching the faint glow of the car's taillights disappear into the rain. A smirk tugged at his lips. He felt a twinge of satisfaction, certain this was just another of Vanessa's emotional outbursts. She'd come crawling back, didn't they all? In his world, everything and everyone eventually bent to his will. He poured himself another tumbler of whiskey and walked into his personal study, decorated with trophies of success, framed front pages from Forbes press clippings lauding his entrepreneurial genius awards from industry summits. He'd practically conquered every obstacle in his life. Yes, he told himself this would blow over in a day or two. Instead of dwelling on Vanessa, Ethan turned his attention to Titan Wave's latest expansion deal. He had a call scheduled with top executives at a multinational conglomerate in Hong Kong. If successful, it would push the company's valuation past the billion-dollar mark. That was his priority, far more significant in his view than any domestic squabble. By the time morning arrived, Ethan had signed a crucial preliminary agreement. He felt unstoppable, convinced that no personal crisis could overshadow his corporate triumph. When one of the household staff timidly asked if Mrs. Warren was still out, Ethan waved him off. "She'll be back," he declared, arrogance dripping from every syllable. He had no idea how wrong he was. For the next week, the staff reported no calls from Vanessa, no sign of her car or credit card use. By day 10, gossip in the mansion's corridors suggested she might not come back at all. Even so, Ethan refused to show any concern. In his world, money solved every problem. If Vanessa chose to vanish, that was her loss. He was too busy shaping the next big corporate coup to be bothered. Rachel drove Vanessa to her modest one-bedroom apartment in Silver Lake, a stark contrast to the palatial grandeur Vanessa had left behind. But it was warm and dry, and for that, Vanessa was immensely grateful. The two women settled on a couch piled high with mismatched cushions. A single lamp illuminated the room, casting gentle shadows. With shaking hands, Vanessa recounted what had happened. Rachel listened intently, offering tissues and gentle words. Despite the shock, Vanessa realized an unexpected sense of relief. For the first time in ages, she could speak freely, unafraid of belittlement or scorn. As night turned to dawn, they formulated a plan. Rachel's meager savings wouldn't go far, but she had connections in the local art scene. Maybe she could leverage them to find Vanessa temporary design gigs. Vanessa still had her professional credentials. Even if Ethan had overshadowed her finances, he couldn't erase her talent. The following week, Rachel took Vanessa to small design firms, introduced her to gallery owners, and arranged low-key meetings. Word spread that Vanessa Warren, famed millionaire's wife, was available for freelance work. Curiosity alone intrigued potential clients. Soon she secured a few modest interior design projects. Nothing compared to the scale of her previous endeavors. But it was a start. Exhaustion weighed on Vanessa, but she pressed forward, determined to create a stable environment for her unborn child. At night, she was haunted by memories of Ethan's laughter ringing in her ears. She didn't want revenge, not yet at least. She just wanted to stand on her own 2 feet. Little did she realize that her quiet determination would become the catalyst for something far bigger. A catalyst that would lead her back into Ethan's world, but on terms he'd never see coming. Vanessa's breakthrough arrived unexpectedly, through a dinner invitation from an old acquaintance, William Stone, the billionaire philanthropist whose penthouse she had designed years ago. Stone heard whispers around town that Vanessa was seeking a fresh start. Intrigued and concerned, he reached out to see how he might help. Rachel accompanied Vanessa to Stone's private residence in Brentwood, a sprawling estate filled with art from around the world. Over a sumptuous meal, Stone listened intently to Vanessa's story. He wasn't just sympathetic, he was genuinely outraged at how Ethan had dismissed her. The older billionaire had seen the best and worst of corporate America, and Ethan's arrogance reminded him of young upstarts who believed themselves invincible. Over dessert, Stone leaned forward, his voice smooth yet resolute. Vanessa, I have a proposal. There's a boutique hotel project I'm backing in Santa Monica. We're looking to create a cutting-edge interior that merges sustainability with luxury. I think your vision could be invaluable. Vanessa's eyes lit up. A project like that could propel her back into the high-end design circuit, not to mention bolster her financial independence. But Stone wasn't finished. I've also heard rumblings that Titan Wave is on the verge of a massive expansion. Ethan's been floating the idea of an IPO to major shareholders. If he goes public, everything changes. The control structure will shift. Let's just say there might be an opportunity for someone. Someone with the right resources to gain a seat at that table. Confusion flitted across Vanessa's face. Why was Stone telling her this? He gave a knowing smile. Sometimes, life hands you a chance to regain your footing, and even the score, whether you take it or not, is up to you. Vanessa looked at her swollen belly, heart pounding. A single word echoed in her mind: opportunity. Back at Titan Wave, Ethan was finalizing plans for the initial public offering with his executive team and a group of well-connected investors. They held marathon meetings analyzing market conditions, grooming financial statements, and scheduling roadshows for potential shareholders. The atmosphere buzzed with excitement. An IPO could catapult Titan Wave into a global behemoth. Ethan would stand to make hundreds of millions overnight if everything went smoothly. But behind the scenes, Cracks were forming. Certain senior employees grumbled about Ethan's autocratic leadership style. He'd burned bridges with key partners, dismissing their concerns about technology patents and intellectual property rights. Some long-time employees privately shared that they'd never seen him more reckless. Growth at any cost was his mantra, and they feared the cost might be too high. In board meetings, Ethan displayed a new level of arrogance. With the unstoppable momentum of an IPO fueling his ego, he treated dissent as treason, sneering at even mild challenges. "Trust me," he would say, brandishing charts. "I built Titanwave from the ground up, and I'll steer it exactly where it needs to go." Outside those glass boardroom walls, rumors circulated that Ethan's personal life was in freefall. Vanessa's absence was notable previously. She'd accompanied Ethan to every major event. Now speculation ran wild. Some said she was off traveling, others hinted at marital strife. Ethan deflected any personal questions with a dismissive smirk. Meanwhile, the upcoming IPO stirred interest among major market players, including Stone's circle of investment bankers. As they dug deeper into Titanwave's financial data, they found vulnerabilities, overvalued assets, intangible intellectual property, and a precariously high burn rate. Yet none of it halted Ethan's ambition. He believed himself untouchable, the master of his destiny. But he had no idea that events were already in motion to humble him in ways he never anticipated. While Ethan was caught up in IPO mania, Vanessa poured her heart and soul into William Stone's hotel project. She worked late nights perfecting designs that combined natural elements, reclaimed wood, living plant walls, recycled glass sculptures with sleek contemporary lines. Her growing belly limited her physically, but her determination never wavered. Each completed sketch fueled Vanessa's resolve. For so long, she'd been overshadowed by Ethan's monumental ambitions. Now it was her turn to shine on her own merit. And as William Stone had hinted, the hotel project was just the beginning. Word spread quickly among Stone's business associates about the pregnant designer forging a new path without her millionaire husband. Designing while pregnant presented its own challenges, from swollen ankles to sudden waves of nausea. Yet Vanessa found the process therapeutic. Creating beauty in external spaces helped heal the chaos that had once reigned in her heart. She even started feeling her baby move more regularly, gentle kicks and flutters that reminded her of her ultimate purpose. At each meeting, Stone discreetly introduced Vanessa to influential financiers, attorneys and business consultants who had the inside scoop on Titanwave's impending IPO. These introductions weren't random. Stone had a plan. One evening at a small soiree in his garden, Stone led Vanessa to a reserved table where a tall man in a tailored suit waited. Vanessa Stone said quietly, "This is Benjamin Caldwell, an expert in corporate acquisitions. He's worked with me for years, and I trust him implicitly." Vanessa extended her hand, perplexed but curious. Caldwell flashed a cordial smile. "I've been briefed on your situation," he said politely. "If you're looking for a position of strength regarding Titanwave, and by extension your personal interests, I might be able to help." Vanessa's pulse quickened. She'd never imagined taking on Ethan on the corporate battlefield, but perhaps fate was guiding her there. As Vanessa's third trimester approached, she experienced a scare that tested her resilience. One afternoon, while inspecting site renovations at the Santa Monica Hotel, she felt a sudden, sharp pain in her abdomen. Her vision blurred and her knees buckled. Crew members rushed to her aid, helping her sit as they dialed for an ambulance. At the hospital, doctors discovered she was overworked and dehydrated. Stress levels were sky high, putting her at risk for premature labor. She lay in a stark white room, hooked to IV fluids, tears brimming in her eyes. For a moment she regretted pushing herself so hard. Maybe she thought she should just return to Ethan's mansion, endure his egotism for the sake of her child's safety. Rachel and William Stone visited, bringing flowers and encouraging her to rest. Rachel gently reminded her that a secure, peaceful environment mattered more than any paycheck or design project. Stone, ever the mentor, offered financial support if it meant Vanessa could slow down. But Vanessa refused. She wasn't about to give up the independence she'd begun carving out. Still, the scare made her realize she needed a better support system. That evening, the nurse delivered surprising news. Someone had called in, asking about her condition. The name, Ethan Warren. Despite everything, Ethan had apparently learned of her hospitalization and inquired about her health. Vanessa's heart clenched. She half expected him to barge in, but no one came. The next morning, her doctor stressed that she needed moderate bed rest and significantly reduced stress. Vanessa agreed, making arrangements with Stone to manage her design tasks remotely for a while. Tucked into a hotel suite near the hospital, courtesy of Stone, she used the downtime to reflect. If Ethan was still monitoring her, perhaps he cared more than he let on. Or maybe he was just curious. Either way, she was determined to see her plan through. A week into her partial bed rest, Vanessa met with Benjamin Caldwell at Stone's estate. She arrived in the late afternoon, the sun casting long shadows on the manicured lawns. Caldwell greeted her with a friendly nod, his manner professional but warm. He wasted no time diving into details. Titan Wave's IPO is set to launch next quarter. The valuation is ambitious, but as we speak, institutional investors are positioning themselves to buy sizable chunks of the company. If we move swiftly, we can acquire shares quietly before public trading opens, building a significant stake. Vanessa blinked, feeling a surge of anxiety mixed with excitement. But how would I manage that I don't have that kind of capital? Caldwell smiled reassuringly. You don't, but William Stone does, and he's willing to back you. The arrangement can be structured so that you're essentially the beneficial owner of the shares. We'll keep it under wraps until the time is right. Vanessa's mind raced. This wasn't just a business deal. It was a seismic shift in power dynamics. She recalled Ethan's mocking laughter, his dismissive tone, the cold nights in that cavernous mansion. The chance to show him she was more than just a decoration was tantalizing. But was it vengeance, or was it a stand for her and her child's future? Sensing her hesitation, Caldwell softened his tone. This is your decision. Stone is doing this because he sees your potential and respects your talent. He despises how Ethan treated you, but he won't force your hand. Think about the life you want for your baby. Once you hold a majority stake in Titan Wave, you'll have leverage Ethan can't ignore. Vanessa exhaled, aware this was the pivot in her journey. Let's do it, she whispered. I'm ready. Rumors began swirling in the corridors of Titan Wave that a secret investor was quietly amassing significant shares. Ethan and his CFO noticed unusual activity in the private placement rounds leading up to the IPO. But the shares were being purchased through shell companies and holding firms, each meticulously layered to disguise the ultimate beneficiary. Ethan brushed off these concerns initially. Money was money. And if someone believed strongly enough in Titan Wave's future to buy large blocks of pre-IPO shares that only validated his genius, his attention was laser-focused on the roadshows in New York and London, where he dazzled prospective investors with grand visions of global expansion, advanced AI solutions, and market dominance. However, As the final weeks ticked down to the IPO date, the CFO's tone shifted. "Ethan," he said nervously, during a late-night strategy session, "this new investor's holdings exceed 5%. They might be angling for a seat on the board. If they cross 10%, that's a significant stake." Ethan shrugged. "I've done my due diligence. Our stock is hot. Everyone wants in. It's not unusual." "But we don't know who they are," the CFO insisted. "It's not typical for an investor to stay so hidden unless they're planning a takeover or a major power move. We need more intel." Ethan waved him off. "Fine, hire someone to dig. We're too big for any single investor to topple me. I hold the lion's share. Relax." Behind that confident veneer, a sliver of doubt began gnawing at Ethan. He prided himself on control over his company, his staff, even his personal relationships. The idea that someone might be maneuvering behind the scenes to challenge him was unsettling. Still, he decided he had bigger fish to fry. Titan Wave's public debut was around the corner, and he was about to become 10 times wealthier. Let the mysterious investors reveal themselves if they dared. In her hotel suite, Vanessa monitored each milestone in Titan Wave's IPO progression. She spoke regularly with Caldwell, reviewing stock purchase agreements, analyzing corporate bylaws, and ensuring their newly formed consortium complied with SEC regulations. The complexity was dizzying. She found herself in a world of suits, legal jargon, and half-smiles that hinted at high-stakes manipulation. It was a stark contrast to the quiet life she'd once envisioned, designing spaces, finding solace in creative expression. Yet she couldn't deny a growing sense of empowerment. Each share they acquired felt like reclaiming a piece of her voice, drowned out for so long by Ethan's overbearing persona. Outside of these dealings, Vanessa maintained a routine of prenatal classes, gentle yoga, and remote design sessions for the Santa Monica Hotel. Rachel supported her every step, lending moral support and occasionally accompanying her to doctor's visits. Whenever doubts crept in, fears that she was stepping too far into a game she barely understood, Rachel reminded her why she'd started this journey. Her unborn child deserved a stable, respectful environment. If securing her future meant meeting Ethan on the battlefield, he understood best finance, then so be it. William Stone provided the capital, but he did so quietly, letting Vanessa's name remain at the forefront of the holding entities. He wanted her to own her triumph. He also confided that he had personal reasons for wanting to curtail Ethan's arrogance. "I've seen men like him," Stone murmured one afternoon as they reviewed documents. "They take the world by storm, but leave a trail of broken promises. It's time someone forced him to see the consequences of his actions." Vanessa nodded, eyes resolute. The day of reckoning neared. She no longer felt like a pawn in Ethan's empire. She was the one rewriting the rules, one share at a time. IPO day arrived. Cameras flashed as Ethan stepped onto the stage at the New York Stock Exchange. Dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, Titan Wave's logo pinned to his lapel, he exuded confidence. He offered a triumphant grin to the cheering crowd of employees, investors, and reporters. The opening bell rang, and the crowd erupted in applause. Ethan's eyes sparkled with the thrill of validation. He had taken Titan Wave from his parents' garage to Wall Street's stage. It was the pinnacle of his career until everything began to shift. As the day wore on, the CFO discreetly handed Ethan a folder. Inside was the updated shareholder registry. Under notable holdings, one name jumped out: the Caldwell Stone Consortium. They had acquired a staggering 22% of the shares. Ethan's heart lurched, though he managed to keep his composure. "Who the hell is behind this?" he hissed at the CFO, stepping away from the cameras for a moment. Stone's a known entity, but he's never been partial to Titan Wave. The CFO replied, sweating. As for Caldwell, he's a corporate lawyer who handles high-profile acquisitions. We suspect they're representing a silent partner, but we don't know who. Ethan's mind raced, cycling through potential rivals. Stone was wealthy enough to buy large stakes, but for what purpose? Had Ethan slighted him in the past? A memory flickered of Stone's penthouse unveiling. Vanessa had been there. Stone had introduced them. Could Stone be meddling because of Vanessa? While reporters clamored for interviews, Ethan's smile stayed pinned, but his insides churned. By market close, Titan Wave scored in its debut, making him richer on paper than ever. Yet for the first time, Ethan felt a creeping vulnerability. Some unknown adversary had secured a massive foothold in his company. It was a strategic ambush, and he had no clue where it would lead. 2 days after the IPO launch, Ethan's world took an unexpected turn. A formal request landed on his desk, signed by the Caldwell Stone Consortium, demanding an extraordinary shareholder meeting. The reason? Concerns over corporate governance and a motion to elect new board members. Ethan stared at the document, his pulse quickening. It wasn't just a suggestion, it was a legal obligation. He slammed the paper onto his desk. "Who the hell do they think they are?" he barked, pacing furiously. "I built Titan Wave from scratch. They want to tell me how to run it. Now." Despite his fury, Ethan's legal team advised compliance. Corporate bylaws were clear shareholders with sufficient equity could request such a meeting. There was no choice but to face them. The meeting was scheduled at Titan Wave's headquarters in Los Angeles, under tight security, and flashing media cameras that had caught wind of a brewing power struggle inside the billion-dollar company. On the morning of the meeting, Vanessa stood in front of the mirror, smoothing her tailored maternity dress over her full belly. At nearly 9 months pregnant, every movement was deliberate, but her spirit was anything but slow. Her eyes held clarity, her jaw set with conviction. This was the moment she had prepared for, not just to confront Ethan, but to claim what she had built with her own hands, her own pain, and her unborn child's future in mind. She arrived through a private side entrance, escorted by Caldwell and flanked by William Stone. The three entered the boardroom with quiet authority. Inside, Ethan sat at the head of the table, surrounded by loyal executives and his legal advisors. He looked up and froze. Vanessa walked in, composed and poised, her presence commanding the room. For a heartbeat, time held its breath. Ethan's jaw twitched, his eyes narrowing in disbelief. "You," he muttered. Vanessa didn't flinch. She approached the long glass table and gently laid down a sheaf of documents. "These papers certify beneficial ownership of the Caldwell Stone shares," she said, her voice clear and unwavering. "Per agreement, I hold voting rights equivalent to 22% of Titan Wave's stock, effective immediately." The silence that followed was deafening. Ethan's smirk faltered. His eyes scanned the papers, his confidence buckling. "You're bluffing," he said coldly. "You're just a designer. You don't know what you're doing." Vanessa met his glare with calm intensity. "I may be a designer, but I'm also a mother, a shareholder, and someone who knows what it's like to be underestimated. That ends today." Ethan slammed his fist on the table. "This is my company." "No," she said quietly. "This is a company with hundreds of employees, stakeholders, and a future that deserves better than your ego." Caldwell stood and outlined the proposal, a motion to restructure the board and appoint new leadership focused on long-term sustainability, transparency, and ethical governance. Ethan interrupted repeatedly, accusing them of sabotage and betrayal. But every outburst only revealed his desperation. Board members glanced at each other, once loyal, but now uncertain. Vanessa spoke again, her voice now laced with compassion. "I'm not here to destroy what you built, Ethan. I'm here to protect it from you." With that, the vote commenced. One by one, members raised their hands. As the final count was tallied, it became clear Vanessa's coalition had achieved a majority. The gavel struck. Ethan was no longer the unchallenged king of Titan Wave. He stared at Vanessa, breathing heavily, a storm raging in his chest. But she didn't gloat. She merely stood, placing a gentle hand on her belly. "The rain didn't wash me away, Ethan," she said softly. "It prepared me." And with that, she walked out of the boardroom, not as a victim, but as the woman who rewrote the ending to her own story. The extraordinary shareholder meeting commenced under a heavy cloud of anticipation. Titan Wave's top brass investors, attorneys, and board members filled the sleek Los Angeles headquarters' largest conference room. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city skyline beyond, but all eyes were fixed inward on the polished mahogany table where corporate power was about to shift. Ethan sat at the head of the table, stone-faced shoulders tight beneath his designer suit. He still looked the part of a visionary CEO, but the confidence that once radiated from him now simmered with barely restrained panic. His mind raced with questions. What was Vanessa's endgame? How had she orchestrated this? And worst of all, how had he not seen it coming? The door opened. In stepped William Stone, calm and commanding as ever, followed by Benjamin Caldwell, who offered only a brief, polite nod. Then came Vanessa. Gasps rippled across the room. She entered with a quiet grace that silenced every whisper. 8 months pregnant, dressed in an elegant navy blouse and tailored coat, Vanessa looked every bit the woman Ethan had once dismissed and now had to face on equal footing. She met Ethan's eyes and saw the shock there. It was the same look he'd had the first time she'd ever challenged him, back when she'd redesigned his office and told him glass and concrete couldn't buy warmth. Ethan half rose, as if unsure whether to confront her or welcome her. "Vanessa," he muttered, voice caught between disbelief and dread. She walked to the table without pause, laid down a folder, and addressed the board. "As legal documentation confirms, I am the beneficial owner of the Caldwell Stone shares, accounting for 22% of Titan Wave's equity. That grants me full voting rights, including participation in this meeting." A stunned silence. Ethan's mouth parted, but no words came. Caldwell cleared his throat and launched into the formal motion. "We are calling for the election of new board members in light of recent concerns regarding corporate governance, over-leveraging, and potential liabilities related to aggressive expansion." Ethan found his voice. "This is absurd. A hostile takeover by someone who doesn't even understand the tech industry." He glared at Vanessa. "You're a designer, not a CEO. You don't know how any of this works." Vanessa turned to him slowly. "No, Ethan, I'm not a tech CEO. But I know how you work." Her voice remained calm, but each word landed like a hammer. "I watched you steamroll people. I watched you ignore warnings from experts. I lived under your roof while you played king and forgot what it meant to be human." Several board members shifted in their seats, eyes darting between the two. Vanessa continued, "I'm not here to destroy Titan Wave. I'm here to help save it from becoming another cautionary tale of unchecked ego. I want to help steer it back to innovation, collaboration, and integrity. Ethan slammed his hand on the table. You want to talk integrity? You blindsided me. You manipulated Stone into backing you. William Stone leaned forward, voice smooth but firm. No one manipulated me, Ethan. I made a choice. One you gave me every reason to make. Ethan's eyes flared. I built this from nothing. You think you can walk in, you who abandoned her family name to ride my coattails and hijack it? Vanessa's face remained composed, but her eyes gleamed. I didn't abandon anything. I left behind your control, your cruelty, and your condescension. What I didn't leave behind was my spine or my vision. The room held its breath. Caldwell returned to the agenda. We propose the following slate of new board directors. Names were listed respected figures in business, finance, and technology, including 2 women Vanessa had personally selected for their innovation-first mindset. A heated back and forth followed. Ethan rallied his allies, invoking his legacy, his sacrifices, his years of dominance. But for the first time, his charm rang hollow. The room didn't see a maverick, only a man desperate to preserve control. Then Vanessa stood again. You taught me something, Ethan, she said softly. You taught me that power doesn't ask permission. Well, I'm not asking any more. With that, the vote began. One by one, hands were raised. Board members who once echoed Ethan's vision now hesitated, weighed the risks, and slowly sided with Vanessa's coalition. The final count confirmed it. The majority now belonged to the new guard. Ethan Warren was no longer in sole command. He slumped back in his chair, the weight of years crashing onto his shoulders. The company he had built, his pride, his fortress, had pivoted beneath him. Vanessa looked at him not with triumph, but with solemn clarity. This isn't revenge, she said gently. It's restoration. And with that, the meeting adjourned. The boardroom emptied, murmurs of a new era swirling through the air. Ethan remained seated, eyes distant, as Vanessa exited without looking back. She wasn't just reclaiming her power, she was rewriting the future. And this time, she held the pen. In the days following the shareholder coup, headlines exploded across every major outlet. Pregnant wife topples tech titan. Vanessa Warren ousts husband in stunning boardroom power shift. The Queen's Gambit. How Vanessa Warren outplayed Silicon Valley's favorite son. To some, it was a scandal straight out of a Netflix drama. To others, it was a case study in poetic justice. But to Vanessa, it wasn't about revenge or headlines. It was about reclaiming her dignity, securing her child's future, and finally stepping out from behind Ethan's shadow. She spent the next week meeting with TitanWave's restructured board and executive leadership. They gathered in a smaller, more collaborative setting. Gone were the stiff, oversized boardrooms Ethan preferred. The tone had shifted. Executives spoke more freely, sharing concerns that had long been suppressed. Vanessa listened intently, not to dictate, but to understand. I'm not here to micromanage, she told them, hands resting gently on her pregnant belly. TitanWave is a company of innovators. I want to protect that. All I ask is that we lead with transparency, ethics, and vision. The board responded positively. They voted in an interim CEO, a seasoned technologist who had once clashed with Ethan, but had always been respected for his balanced leadership. Internally, employees breathed a sigh of relief. Word spread quickly through TitanWave's Slack channels and office corridors. The new era had begun. But for Ethan, the fallout was relentless. His name remained on the founder plaque, but he no longer held decision-making power. His email was restricted, his office reassigned. Clients began demanding renegotiated terms. Analysts questioned whether the company's meteoric rise had been fueled more by image than substance. The same media that once celebrated him now scrutinized every detail of his leadership failures. His inner circle fractured. His longtime CFO resigned, citing philosophical differences. A few prominent venture capital firms quietly distanced themselves. Even some of his personal friends stopped returning calls. Ethan retreated to his Bel Air mansion, where opulence now felt like a prison. Rooms that once buzzed with staff and guests now echoed with silence. He wandered through marble hallways like a ghost, haunted by the rain-soaked night Vanessa had walked out, and the meeting where she'd walked back in and taken control. For days he didn't leave the estate. He drank, raged through things. But eventually the storm inside him began to settle, not from peace but from exhaustion. Then one afternoon, a familiar name popped up in the news: the Santa Monica Boutique Hotel project. The photos showed Vanessa radiant and composed, touring the nearly completed site. She looked strong, focused, maternal. Her baby bump was prominent beneath a stylish trench coat. Something stirred in Ethan. Not jealousy, not even anger. It was a foreign sensation. Regret. The next day, he got into his car and drove to Santa Monica. Security stopped him at the hotel entrance, but after a brief conversation and a call placed upstairs, Vanessa agreed to meet him in one of the model suites. She stood by the window overlooking the ocean when he walked in. She turned slowly. Ethan. He looked older, worn down. There was no arrogance in his eyes now, only uncertainty. I saw the article, he said quietly. The hotel looks beautiful. Thank you. A pause stretched between them. I didn't come to fight, he said. I just needed to see you. Vanessa studied him for a moment. What is it you want to say? He took a breath. I was wrong. About everything. About how I treated you. About thinking I could build an empire and ignore the cost. I never really saw you, Vanessa, not as an equal, not as a partner. And I'm sorry. It was the first genuine apology he had ever given her. And while it didn't undo the pain, it didn't go unnoticed. She nodded, keeping her voice calm. We both made mistakes. But I won't let you hurt me again. Or our child. He nodded, two eyes wet. I understand. They stood there, not as husband and wife, but as two people finally seeing each other clearly. When Ethan left, shoulders slumped. Vanessa let out a long breath. A contraction rippled through her belly, sharp but expected. She placed a hand on her stomach and whispered, We're almost there, little one. In that moment she felt at peace, not because she had won, but because she had grown. She hadn't just claimed back her power. She had rewritten her future. Vanessa's journey from scorned spouse to empowered shareholder is a testament to resilience and self-belief. Standing up to arrogance and dismissiveness, she fought not just for a personal victory, but for a better future for her unborn child. In the end, she discovered she was so much more than a millionaire's accessory. She was the architect of her own destiny. If Vanessa's story has gripped your heart, sparked your determination, or reminded you of the power each of us holds to rewrite our narratives, then take action. Like this video to show your support for stories of triumph. Share it to inspire others who might be in a dark place, and subscribe so you don't miss out on more compelling tales. Your engagement helps ensure these powerful stories reach those who need them most. Thank you for joining us on this unforgettable journey.